There is no bell to warn you, no sign to prepare you, no voice asking if you're ready. Life chooses its own moment to strike and break a person. In an instant, what once felt solid begins to crack. What you thought was a foundation turns out to be nothing more than a fragile layer of dust. And when that blow lands, the weak will react on instinct, collapsing, begging, seeking comfort to numb the pain. But that is not the way of those who aim to become unbreakable. Because when everything is gone, when all you once clung to has vanished, this is the moment that strips away every facade and reveals the truth within. It is not in moments of ease that your real nature shows, but when everything is stripped away without mercy. To truly see yourself, allow it all to fall apart. Let the money go. Let loved ones turn their backs. Let the future blur into uncertainty. In that storm, your real self will step into the light. If the mind is weak, it will drown in self-pity, letting the pain eat away at every thought. But if you keep a clear head, stay sharp, and separate yourself from the emotions screaming inside, the storm becomes a forge, and every strike of adversity hammers you into steel. Pain is not the enemy, but a ruthless master. It draws a sharp line. Those who are fragile will shatter instantly, while those who can endure will be tempered. Every cut from fate is not meant to destroy you, but to test whether you can stand again on new legs. If you let it crush you, you will remain trapped in an endless cycle of regret and blame. But if you accept it as a lesson, your mind will be clad in armor, and nothing will ever bend you again. The world does not care how you feel. It only responds to the version of you that you become. When left in the dark, don't scream for rescue. Sit still. Listen to every surge of thought rising within. Dissect your emotions. Find where your weakness hides. Then cut off its supply. Do not reach for a hand from the outside. Retreat inward, to the only place where the fortress of your mind can be rebuilt. Once you forge a mind that does not collapse under pressure, no one will ever have power over you again. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to cling to softness that leaves you vulnerable. You are here to become a threat to anything that has ever tried to destroy you. Every time life tries to break you, remember it is an examination. No one passes by luck. Only those who rise with sharper eyes, stronger hands, and a colder heart can move forward. This moment is a test of will. It needs no noise, no display, only absolute resolve. Let pain grind every edge within you so that when it returns, you are no longer the prey, but the one holding the reins. And once you have passed through the storm, your transformation will not need explanation. Others will feel it not from the words you speak, but from the way you walk, the way you meet their eyes without flinching, the way you no longer tremble at the things that once shook you. When everything shatters, the weak lose direction, while the strong find a map. That is the difference. One is thrown into the raging current and swept away. The other swims against it to find the source. Your mind will resist, will search for any reason to escape. But if you are clear-eyed enough to see it, this is the one moment when all illusions are torn apart, and the only moment when you can rebuild yourself from a true foundation. Do not wait for favorable conditions to begin changing. These merciless moments are the doorway. The question is, in what form will you walk through, dragging yourself as a tattered wreck, or stepping out as a warrior from the fire? When life breaks you, it is offering the chance to be reborn in a form you never dared to imagine before. And if you seize it, you will never again bow to any storm. When hurt, the natural reflex for most people is to find shelter. They rush toward instant pleasures, sweet words of reassurance, comforting embraces. They blast loud music, pack their schedules with social plans, and keep their phones constantly in hand just to avoid hearing their own inner voice. But all of that is only a temporary drug. Comfort may help you forget today's pain, but it will steal tomorrow's strength. That is why the weak remain trapped in the cycle of collapse and patching up, never building anything truly lasting. Comfort breeds a lazy mind. It trains you to avoid instead of confront. Once the mind becomes addicted to feeling good, any challenge becomes a reason to quit. The world out there prefers it this way, because a soft mind will never rise to claim control. A person lulled into ease will not question, will not resist, will not demand more than what they already have. That is the formula for keeping people submissive. In contrast, the strong do not run toward comfort. They move toward control, and control does not begin with others, it begins with the self. Control is the ability to stare directly at pain, anger, and fear, and refuse to let them dictate your actions. It is when the mind says, "Stand still," even as emotions urge, "Run away." It is when you remain calm in a room full of shouting, stay silent when provoked, and keep your plan intact while everything around you falls apart. Most have been trained to numb their emotions rather than control them. They hide behind screens, eat to forget, drink to sleep, blame to feel lighter. Everything is designed to keep them far from the real battle taking place within. But only those who stay on the battlefield of the mind, watching and steering their reactions, are strong enough to lead their own lives. The one who controls the mind owns their world. While others chase pleasure, you train focus. When they seek validation from others, you sit with discomfort and learn to endure it. When they panic in the face of crisis, you make a plan. This difference is not coldness, it is prioritizing self-mastery over surrendering to fleeting emotions. Others may call you distant, but in truth, it means they no longer control you. Your silence will unsettle them, your indifference will disturb them, and that is the signal you are on the right path. The goal is not to be understood by everyone, but to have your mind obey your will. To reach this state, you must be willing to face your darkest thoughts, your weakest memories, and refuse to step back. This is the point where most people quit, but you cannot. Once control becomes a habit, you no longer react impulsively. You act with calculation. You know when to speak and when to remain silent. You understand that every word you release must strike like a precise blade, not spill as a stream of empty phrases meant to soothe others. You refuse to argue with those whose minds are already locked, because your attention is a resource and it belongs only to strategies worth your effort. This control cannot be bought nor faked. It is built with every moment you refuse to act on instinct, every time you stay still when pushed to react, every time you hold back the urge to prove yourself. Each of these moments forges another layer of mental armor. That is how you create a power untouched by circumstances or the emotions of others. When comfort calls, remember it is a velvet-wrapped blade. When discomfort appears, know it is the training ground for your mind. The weak seek ease to escape. The strong seek challenge to fortify their inner power, and once you hold this key, you will no longer be tossed by the emotional waves of the world. You will ride over them, using them to go further. Weakness does not come from pain itself, but from allowing emotions to seize control of judgment. The moment you let emotions steer the direction, you hand over all your mental power to chaos. Every time you react on instinct, you make yourself an easy target to read. Others know how to provoke your anger, trigger your sadness, or strike at your need for validation. And when you respond exactly as they expect, you confirm that you have not escaped the trap. Pain is inevitable, but how you interpret it determines whether it becomes strength or destruction. In the game of power, the one who controls meaning controls everything. If you let emotions lead, you will be pulled into a predictable zone where every action can be exploited. But if you discipline your emotions, you turn automatic reactions into deliberate choices. This is not about being emotionless, it is about feeling fully, then choosing the timing and manner of expression to maximize impact. Those without discipline often think that strong reactions prove authenticity, but an uncontrolled reaction is nothing more than an open invitation for others to read and use you. A sharp mind will choose silence when necessary, speaking little but making each word cut like a blade. It does not waste energy arguing with someone whose mind is locked shut. Every move, every word is calculated like a strategic chess piece, never allowing emotions to break the structure. Strategic sharpness demands the ability to endure emotional pressure without rushing to release it. You may feel anger surge, yet keep your expression unchanged so others can't tell which nerve they touched. You may feel moved, yet only allow it to show when you are somewhere no one can see. This is not pointless suppression. It is protecting control over your own psychological levers. Once emotional discipline is forged, you will find yourself shifting from reactive to proactive. Instead of being pulled along by emotions, you use them to direct your actions. Instead of letting others throw you off balance, you watch them lose control when they don't get the reaction they expect. That is an advantage most never reach, because they cannot overcome the urge for immediate release. Sharpness does not come from winning every confrontation, but from knowing when to fight and when to withdraw. It requires reading situations faster than others, recognizing who is leading and who is being led, then choosing a response that keeps you on top. Every time you resist the urge to explode, you are training one of the most elusive forms of power, psychological power. The weak act out of the need to be understood. The sharp act to create impact. The weak speak to unload emotions. The sharp speak to shape outcomes. The weak seek instant relief. The sharp wait for the moment to strike the target. To them, emotions are not the master but a tool, something to guide or weaponize, never something allowed to seize the controls. When emotions are broken away from power, the mind reaches the stillness necessary for deep calculation. You are no longer pulled into the whirlpool of sudden anger or fleeting excitement. You keep the long view, even while everything around you is burning. And it is precisely that calm in the midst of chaos that makes others wary, because they cannot read you, nor predict your next move. Breaking emotional control is not about killing your humanity. It is about refusing to let instinct dictate the outcome. It is how you transform yourself from a predictable pawn into a strategic player, always ready to make the move no one saw coming. And once you possess this sharpness, you will realize that true power is not in reacting the fastest, but in reacting the most precisely, sometimes by not reacting at all. Most people are not truly imprisoned by their past. They are trapped by the story they keep repeating about that past. They recount betrayals, losses, and pains, as if these were the very core of who they are. They turn wounds into identity, memories into an invisible medal they hope others will acknowledge. But pity never grants power. It only keeps you in the circle of weakness, where every action is justified by "what happened to me?" To break free, you must strip away the very story that is holding you back. No more victim of circumstances, no more pitiful one who needs saving, no more person the world owes an apology to. The truth is, life owes you nothing, but it will give you power if you are ruthless enough to claim it. That begins with rewriting the story not to twist the truth, but to shift your role from the one acted upon to the one who acts. The past may have hurt you, but it has no right to define you unless you grant it that power. Pain is a phase, a blow, a test, not an identity. Every time you repeat it as part of who you are signing the contract with weakness all over again. End that contract. Bury the version of yourself that bowed, that accepted, that begged. From this day forward, the story is no longer "what happened to me," but "who I became because of it." Others will remind you of your past, sometimes to pull you back into the familiar weakness they know. Let them talk. Just make sure the version they are calling for no longer exists. When they retell an old chapter, you are already a new book. That is how you seize control of the story, by killing the weak version, so there is nothing left for them to hold on to. This control does not come from defending yourself or arguing back, but from turning every doubt into your silence and every judgment into fuel for the results you create. Each step forward needs no explanation, only results strong enough to make the noise around you irrelevant. Don't try to convince them you've changed. Make them realize it themselves when they can no longer find a trace of the old you. Rewriting the story is not a trick of illusion. It is an intentional act, requiring mental discipline and the willingness to give up the small comforts the victim identity provides. Because as long as you remain the victim, you have excuses to delay, to avoid, to seek sympathy. But once you change roles, that immunity is gone. From now on, everything is your responsibility, and that is where power truly begins. Those who control the story understand that others' perception of them is a tool, not a sentence. They use it to steer situations, to open or close doors in service of their strategy. Once you master this, you will move with a silence that feels threatening, speaking little yet causing others to adjust themselves before coming close. Whenever the past tries to intrude, remind yourself it only exists if you keep feeding it. And whenever someone mentions it to diminish you, let them speak into the void because the person they are looking for has disappeared. In this game, the disappearance of an old version of yourself is the strongest declaration that you have taken control of the story. No one has the right to write your ending but you. Don't let your story be a recycled script of repeated pages filled with complaints and regrets. Rewrite it with chapters that shock people, that make them flip back to check if this is truly the same character. And when this new story is lived out every day, it becomes the shield that ensures you will never again fall back into that old territory of weakness. Attachment may look like affection, but when placed in the wrong place, it turns into chains. At first, it wears the shape of warmth, love, loyalty, hope. But the more you cling to what lies outside your control, the more you hand it the power to dictate your emotions. That is the moment your inner strength begins to crack. You wait for a message to feel worthy. You hold on to a relationship just to avoid the emptiness. You compromise your standards to keep something that should have already left. All of these are the first fractures in your mental armor. Not all attachment is bad, but blind attachment turns you into a hostage to someone else's emotions. When your mind depends on external feedback, any shift from them is enough to make you lose control. An indifferent glance, a careless word, a prolonged absence, any of these can pull you into a spiral of doubt and weakness. And at that point, power has already changed hands. Inner strength is built when you learn to let go of what is not yours, not in the sense of becoming numb, but in the sense of becoming free. Never letting your peace depend on someone else, never tying your self-worth to whether you are chosen or not. When you understand that happiness is not in someone else's hands, you cut off the biggest source of control the world could ever impose on you. Letting go is not always loud. Sometimes it happens in silence when you realize you don't need explanations, you don't need perfect closure, you don't need agreement. It is the decision to step back and watch from a distance, no longer wanting to grip tightly because you know holding on will only drain your strength. This distance is not hatred, it is preservation. You save your energy for what is worthy and stay silent toward what only seeks to drain you. When you learn detachment, you will notice something strange. Your silence becomes heavy. Others feel your absence more than your presence. Your calm unsettles them because they no longer have the power to provoke a reaction. Every time you choose not to explain, you reclaim focus. Every time you choose not to react, you demand respect. Every time you walk away, you declare that you do not belong to anyone who can possess you. Others will call you cold, changed, selfish. Let them talk. That is just the echo of them losing the control they were used to having. When you no longer play the role of emotional servant, those who once benefited from your leniency will try to pull you back. But that is when you must stand firmer than ever. Inner strength cannot survive if you hand the keys back to those who once tore down your walls. The hardest part is not cutting ties, it is maintaining the distance afterward. Every memory, every habit, every urge will try to reopen the door. But if you let emotions lead, you will lose everything you've just built. Remember, letting go does not erase the value of what once was. It simply puts it in its rightful place, the past. The present is where you lay the new foundation, one that no one but you is allowed to build. The peak of freedom is when no person, no outcome, no idealized self-image can control your mood. At that point, everything outside is just a variable, while you remain the equation that cannot be undone. Attachment is no longer a chain, but a conscious choice. You stay because you want to, not because you need to. You leave because you know, not because you fear. Killing attachment is not closing your heart, it is locking the gate to dependency. You can still love, trust, and give, but never at the cost of your self-respect and mental strength. Because once you hold emotional independence, the world can change colors, people can change hearts, yet your mind remains intact, and that is the kind of power no one can ever take away. People do not fear being alone because of the emptiness. They fear it because they must face the voice within. They surround themselves with crowds, noise, and packed schedules just to avoid hearing their own thoughts. But that is also why they never become truly sharp. Every great mind, every dominating will, is forged in isolation. Self-imposed isolation is entirely different from enforced loneliness. Enforced loneliness is unwanted distance. Self-imposed isolation is a strategy. It is the moment you withdraw from the whirlpool of the crowd, step away from distractions, and enter the space where only you and the raw truth about yourself remain. There is no one left to blame, no one to shield you, and no one to distract you from the cracks within. In the stillness of isolation, everything you have avoided will appear. Long-buried fears will surface. Weak habits will reveal themselves. Every illusion you built to make life easier will be stripped away. This is not the cruelty of fate, but a necessary test, because only when you face them directly can you destroy them. Many, upon entering this state, rush to fill the gap, turning on a screen, sending messages, meeting someone, anything to avoid the silence. But those who understand the value of isolation will stay, allowing the silence to do its work, sharpening focus, filtering thoughts, restructuring the inner self. This is not time for entertainment. It is time for planning, reading the field, and calculating the next moves. In darkness, you see more clearly. When noise no longer scatters your attention, you see who truly stands with you, who is there only for temporary gain, who is a weakness, and who is a source of strength. You learn not to react immediately, but to gather data. And when you have enough, every step you take back into the light will be certain, calculated, and impossible to predict. Isolation is also a process of purification. You strip away what is unnecessary, pointless conversations, relationships kept only to fill the void, habits that drain your energy. What remains is an unshakable core. From this core, inner strength is built layer upon layer until nothing outside can break it. Self-imposed isolation is also a mirror of true power. When you return from silence, you will notice the change in others' eyes. Without saying much, they sense you have transformed. Quiet confidence, a presence that makes people adjust their behavior. Calmness, even when tension rises, all of it forged in the time you disappeared. This is not for those seeking quick results. In isolation, you will feel separated from the world, at times even forgotten. But that very forgetfulness gives you the space to rebuild without interference. When you return, you no longer seek recognition as before, because you have built a new standard, one higher than any external gaze. Isolation is a test of endurance. The weak will run back to noise to fill the void. The strong will stay with the silence and emerge as an unpredictable, unshakable version of themselves. That is when you understand you need no one to feel whole, no one to confirm your worth, and no one to keep you moving forward. A true leader is not shaped by applause, but by hours alone with plans, truth, and discipline. Every moment in isolation is a hammer strike on the mind, every sharpened thought a new blade, and every refusal to return to comfort another layer of armor. In time, you will see that this empty space is no longer frightening. It is your territory, the place where power is made. When you step out from the forge of isolation, you are no longer the same. You will not speak much about what you did, because what you have become will speak for itself. And when facing new challenges, you will enter them with eyes accustomed to darkness, hands used to building in silence, and a mind trained never to tremble again. Pain is the harshest intelligence test life gives to a person. It's nothing like an exam with printed questions and clear answers. Pain strikes without warning, shatters routines, challenges the ego, and strips away every illusion. Most respond emotionally through anger, blame, or seeking refuge to avoid facing it. But for those who understand power, the first response is not to feel, but to observe. Observation does not mean denying emotion. It means accepting that emotion is a signal, not a command. When you feel pain, something has just been exposed, a weakness, a gap, a support you thought was solid but was actually fragile. If you react too quickly, you miss the chance to see the real mechanism that makes you vulnerable. But if you pause to analyze, pain becomes a detailed map of where you need reinforcement. Every failure is a data point. Every betrayal is an alarm. Every time you are taken down is a moment when your opponent's strategy and your own blind spots are revealed. The weak get trapped in the thought, "Why me?" The sharp ask, "What does this tell me about my position, my moves, and my blind spots?" The answer is rarely pleasant, but it is the raw material for rebuilding a system that cannot be attacked the same way again. Strategy is born from the ability to redirect instinct. When attacked, instinct wants immediate retaliation, but reacting from emotion only proves your opponent has triggered you. Strategy is different. It chooses the timing, the method, and the target, so that one strike changes the entire game. That's why those who use pain to calculate are far more dangerous than anyone who simply reacts. Pain is also a tool for prediction. When you have been through enough, you start recognizing repeating patterns, certain types of people, situations, or signals that always lead to trouble. This is not extreme distrust. It's tactical memory. It allows you to spot traps from afar, avoiding the games that once cost you dearly. Each such experience becomes a new layer of defense, a higher ring of walls. Strategic precision means every action is filtered through 3 layers: data, timing, and impact. You don't speak just to speak. You speak when you know your words will produce the effect you want. You don't move just to move. You step when you know it will open an advantage or close a threat. And most importantly, you don't react just because you've been provoked. You react when it serves the larger plan. In this process, you learn to step outside the story. No longer I in the sense of a personally offended individual, but the player on a chessboard looking for the path to win. Every loss becomes a match to learn from. Every blow becomes a lesson in distance and leverage. When you see life as a battlefield instead of an emotional stage, all pain becomes a resource for upgrading your tactics. From the outside, people will see you change, speaking less, reacting slower. Yet when you act, everything happens fast, clean, and decisive. They won't know that inside that silence is an entire system of analysis. Risk assessments, identification of weaknesses, selection of options. They will only know you are no longer easily moved, and that alone is enough to make them cautious. When you turn pain into strategic precision, you stop wishing life were less harsh. You step into challenges deliberately, like a warrior training with their sword in a storm, so that when the real battlefield arrives, your hands are already too familiar with the weapon's weight and rhythm. Every scar becomes a tactical note. Every loss is an upgrade to your mental map. Ultimately, pain no longer slows you down. It becomes the fuel that drives you faster but in a far more accurate direction. While others are still busy reacting, you've already moved to a new position, ready for the next move. And by the time they realize it, the board has shifted, and you are the one holding the decisive pieces. No one destroys you with swords or fists. The world does it through emotions, through expectations hidden inside words, through pressure disguised as duty, through bait that triggers the weakest parts of your nature. They don't need to attack head-on. All they need is to make you react as predicted, and they hold the reins. Every time you react unconsciously, a piece of your inner strength is taken away. Emotional immunity is not the shutting down of feelings. It is the ability to absorb external impact without letting it pierce your core. It is different from numbness. Numbness is avoidance. Immunity is standing still and looking directly at it. When someone criticizes, you hear it, but do not let it touch your self-worth. When someone leaves, you feel the absence, but do not let it dictate your actions. When someone tries to provoke you, you see the intent before it can trigger a reaction. To reach this state, you must build boundaries like a fortress. Every word, every signal, every person who comes close is examined. Does this strengthen me or scatter my focus? If it scatters, remove it not with noise, but by withdrawing all access. When your silence becomes the answer, those who once manipulated your emotions will realize the game is over. An unbreakable mind is not formed on peaceful days. It is forged in pressure, betrayal, and loss, but more importantly, in how you handle them. Every time you remain calm when you could have erupted, you add a layer of steel. Every time you walk away when you could have clung, you close a door that will never open again. Every time you stay silent when pressed to explain, you reinforce your control. When you are emotionally immune, you will see the world's behavior toward you shift. Those who once used silence to unsettle you will falter when you no longer respond. Those who once used approval as a reward will find it no longer works. Those accustomed to you lowering your standards to keep the peace will discover that door is now locked for good. This detachment is not meaningless coldness. It is a declaration that you choose inner power over approval. It is a refusal to serve as anyone's emotional caretaker. And from that position, you see you are no longer drawn into old cycles. You no longer let someone's words define your worth, nor their actions determine your path. An unbreakable mind is a state where every external force becomes just a variable, not a deciding factor. You know someone might leave, but it doesn't threaten your stability. You know plans might fail, but it doesn't shatter your spirit. You know loss will come, but you are prepared to turn it into strategy. At that point, the world has no power to bargain with you through fear. At this level, there is no need to prove or defend. You move quietly, letting presence and results speak. You do not seek the spotlight, but when you appear, everything around you adjusts to you. Your stillness becomes a warning. Your focus becomes something others cannot read. Your steadiness becomes a wall no word or action can break. This is the point where every emotional attack loses its effect not because you feel nothing, but because you choose not to react in the way they want. Power no longer lies in winning every battle, but in refusing to be pulled into meaningless ones. When you can stand still in chaos without being swept away, you are truly untouchable. An unbreakable mind is not a gift. It is the product of countless tests where you chose to keep control. And once you have reached it, you will see the truth. Whoever controls their mind controls their life. No fear can command you. No approval can define you. No blow can destroy you. There is only you, clear, calm, and unconquerable.